Hello, sir. I'm not going to read the full discussion post this time, just so we know, just so we save a little bit of time. But essentially, it's what has the Lord been teaching you or challenging you with, looking back on the things that we've learned through this class. I really do think there is definitely one lesson or one sentence, really one idea that really has stood out to me, and it came from last week, but it definitely stands out above everything else from what I've been learning. It's this line in chapter 5, obviously, chapter 5 of Matthew, verse 20. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. I've always thought that righteousness really was. I mean, obviously, righteousness is something that's given to us now because of the work of Christ. But the way that Pennington put it in the video is this would have been huge to somebody trying to figure out what the heck Christ meant, because it seemed impossible for righteousness to overcome that of the scribes and Pharisees. But the thing that keeps sticking out to me is what he said about the kind of righteousness it is. It is a different kind of righteousness. This is not the same righteousness that we see from the Pharisees. And he's talking about the Old Testament. He's talking about the Old Testament law, that obviously if the Pharisees cannot reach this level of righteousness that Christ is talking about, then who can? Or nobody. The thing is it's got to be a different kind of righteousness. And that's monumental to me. And it's so true. You know, that righteousness is only achievable and only shown by Christ himself. And now that we have become his righteousness, because of his actions, we now have that. We now show that in God's eyes. And that's huge to me. I think that's really challenged the way that I understand righteousness from our standpoint, and that it truly was a different kind of righteousness that we need to understand, because we so often go back to works-based salvation and come back to that idea of righteousness that's kind of given in the Old Testament by following the law, and really it is a completely different thing. It is a completely different kind of righteousness. And that was just monumental to me. One of the parts of this video, as well as the second part of this video, include a question or two for your classmates. Obviously, I don't have classmates. I have you. So I want to ask you this question, Dr. Hanley. Obviously, in some of my discussion posts, in my notebooks and in my quizzes, I've repeatedly said that I've been being challenged with this idea of being poor in spirit. And you know, the first beatitude is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And you explained it perfectly in our video about this being about people who recognize that they are poor in spirit, that they are missing something, that they are poor, that they're having a need not being met. I have been incredibly blessed over the past few years, honestly years, and I've been taken care of my whole life. Obviously, I've had problems. You know, I have chronic disease now. Like I've had loss. I've lost loved ones. I've gone through it too, but well, relatively speaking. But I know that being poor in spirit is something that we need to remember, because it's something that we do always need Christ, and we need him in our lives. And I know, and I'm not taking this from like a prideful standpoint, from a lack of humility. I've really been trying to, ever since this all started, I've been trying to remind myself where I've been, what God has done for me, and that I am poor in spirit, and that I continuously need him. I continuously am never enough. I continuously cannot provide for myself or for my family. It has to come from him and through him. My question to you is, how do you practically keep yourself from that? Or how do you think other people should do it? Or have you heard of other ways, because I know that faithfully pursuing the Lord and faithfully pursuing sanctification helps through this, right? And you can't do this without the Lord. But I would just like to know practically, what do you think about? What do you pray about? What are your words? What are your routines to make sure that you are staying humble, that you understand, that you continually make yourself understand that as blessed as I am still poor in spirit.